sexy on Secular Sexuality.
And it features storytellers talking about sexuality and sex, and it also features anonymous audience confessions, which are the true delight of the show. We have been running for 9 years, and the show used to be monthly, and now it's quarterly, so our next show is in July.
Nice. So what, I assume you probably get all kinds of confessions.
Yes.
What, can you give us like a general topic range, anything from this to that?
It really ranges. It can be, just confessions about, I'm gay. I confess I'm gay, and I'm really scared to tell people about it. It can be like, foibles and fumbles. So things about, going down on somebody and farting. That's one that comes up often enough.
More common than maybe people think?
Yes,
okay.
Yeah.
Or want to admit?
Yeah, I'd be fascinated to data mine some of those if you could ever run them through some kind of algorithm and see.
We have done that, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also, the humble brags or the not so humble brags. There's also a big portion of the poly community that comes to the show. So and we'll get confessions from every person in that tribe, because being polyamory, right? So it's like the, husbands, boyfriends, girlfriends, just the whole, it's a diagram of all these people that are involved. So you'll get everything that happened, everybody's perspective. That's a type of confession that'll happen at the show.
Oh, wow. That's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So, Christy, did you have any questions for MIranda?
Yeah, well, I really just wanted to find out, to start off with, what is your background? How did you get here?
How did I get to be doing a storytelling show about sex?
Yeah.
Let's see. I started in the sex positive community. I had a podcast in 2007 and sort of built a name for myself in that. And it was a personal narrative. And from there, really wanted to talk to other people and showcase other stories. So my work has all been around event production and creating experiences. And on a personal level, I've always just been interested in the complex and the nuanced and the interesting things that people decide to do with their personal lives and their sex lives.
Cool.
Yeah, and the stories themselves are beautiful, giving people that platform. And to anybody who hasn't checked it out, I would definitely recommend the Bedpost podcast and these different ways to look at it. But yeah, it's incredible to see somebody just lay everything raw out in front of an audience like that. Was there anything that sort of inspired that, or how the idea got from, we should have an event, or I want to do a thing, to actually hitting the ground running?
We just did it.
Yeah.
We just did it.
That's incredible.
I moved to Austin after being in New York City for 10 years. And like I said, I was really involved in the sex positive community, mostly on Twitter. And when I announced that I was moving to Austin on Twitter, Sadie Smythe then said, "Do you know that I live here?" And I had no idea. I knew her and was chatting, on Twitter with her for so long. And so the very first time we met in person, we started to essentially hatch the show. And 4 months later, we had our first show. And
wow.
The room was packed, and it just went from there. Yeah. So this September will be 9 years.
Wow.
Wow. I would like to take a moment just to remind everyone out there that they can call the show to ask MIranda any questions or ask us any questions. It doesn't have to be about Bedpost confessions, but that is tonight's topic. The number on your screen is 512-686-0279. Lines are open, and we would love to hear from you. So, yes, I'll let you get back to it.
Well, I mean, clearly this is a labor of love that has a lot of facets. I mean, you got into Bedpost from this other podcast and these things. What is it about gender and sexuality and those sorts of intimate stories that really drew you in?
Yeah, like I said, they just have always interested in me. And I think, too, there's just been a drive from the community. So the show has just grown and has a loyal fan base, and that's really what keeps it going. I mean, they're still disappointed that it's no longer monthly, but like you said, it is a labor of love, and I think that the feedback that we get from the show really drives us, and really working with the storytellers and the performers. There are some people that I've just have heard their story at a party and was really encouraging them to, tell it on the Bedpost stage. And it took, many more conversations to actually then have them go on the stage. And, as soon as they got off the stage, they were like, okay, when can I do it again? So I really like working with people to figure out how to tell their story on the Bedpost stage specifically. I mean, I like doing that in general, but I know it's really going to work on the stage itself. And it is a mix of having some sort of vulnerability and sharing some sort of commonality, because when we're talking about sex, we're talking about many different things. We use this as a blanket term, but it can, sex can be the sex act, it can be orgasm, it can be intimacy, it can be connection, it can be a way to totally tune into our body, it can be a way to numb out of our body. We can use sex to feel, this awestruck emotion of love and power. And we can also feel totally isolated from it. So there's so many different things that we're talking about when we're talking about sex. And so when working with the performers, that they'll just use that word, and it's like, well, what are you really talking about when you're talking about sex? Is it orgasm? Is it the sex act? Is it connection? So yeah, it's a show about sex, but really it ends up being about so many of the other human connections, the human condition. So people don't often know what to expect thinking about coming to Bedpost Confessions. That's often a big question or a response that we get is like, that's not what I expected. I mean, I didn't know what I expected, but oh my God, it's so wholesome. That's what we end up hearing is more than like, I don't know what people think. If there's going to be live people having sex or something. Yeah,
I think maybe there's this thought that it's going to be all just sort of dirty jokes and things like that. But yeah, there are incredibly human stories that are being shared.
Yeah.
And stories that will connect you and make you feel connected to others, which I think is it's one of the things we try and do here. And I think it's a very human thing, and it's important.
Yeah.
Especially in the sex-positive community. What would you say was one of the more moving topics for you personally? When you hear what topic, when it comes up, emotionally moves you the most?
I don't know if there is one topic, but there can be sometimes the journey of a performer that really moves me. And so, somebody like Ebony Stewart, who is a touring poet and performer, she has performed at Bedpost many times and has always performed her poetry or her prose. And she started to transform and perform more of a Bedpost piece, a more personal narrative. And it was just really moving to see that was challenging for her. Like everybody has something that's going to make them more vulnerable. So she is a touring poet. She's got titles. She's champion. So she can come and totally fucking crush it at Bedpost doing poetry. but she also wanted to do something that would be a little bit more difficult. And so for her, that was a personal narrative. Whereas you could flip it and say somebody who's been doing personal narratives at Bedpost for a long time, they would be completely terrified about sharing a poem on stage. So yeah, I was very moved by Ebony's first personal narrative. She's now performing next at the July show, actually. So, and I think she's going to continue that thread. And yeah, similarly, like Shelby Haddon is another person who's performed with us and slowly let out her story of having vaginismus, this pelvic floor condition. And, she's had a lot of people break up with her because of that. So she's revealed this, like, I think her first story was like 3 weeks in, and it was because everyone breaks up with her at 3 weeks in because they want to have sex, and she wants to have sex, but sex is challenging. So she ends up having sex. I've heard the story, and by sex, just since we already covered it, I mean penis and vagina.
Intercourse, yeah.
Yes.
P&V.
Yes. So she had sex for the first time, and she told me the story just, out for lunch. I'm completely moved. I read a draft of her story that she's going to perform at Bedpost. I get teared up. I hear at the rehearsal do the thing. And then on stage, okay, so I've heard the story so many times, but on stage, I am just watching her and just crying. But like almost, I started to ugly cry. So I had to really stop myself there.
Still got to MC, got to pull it together.
Yeah, I do, right? So, that was a really, I don't think everybody in that room necessarily felt as moved as I did. I mean, I know a lot of people did, but again, it's her story and it's coming together, and it's also just the thing that it is about crafting a story. It's just her piece was so beautifully done, and so there's all these elements that we have to think about when we're telling a story: a beginning, a middle, and end, and having some sort of conflict. And just the way that it was constructed, it just got me every single time.
So sorry if I'm stepping on any questions you might have, but I was wondering if someone were interested in telling their story or their confession, what can they do to get involved?
Email us.
Just email?
Yeah. We have, if you go to our website, bedpostconfessions.com, there is a page that says submit your story, I believe it's called. Maybe called something cheeky like submit to us, And then there's a description of, what we look for and how long a Bedpost piece is, like that nitty gritty. It's like generally 1,500 words, blah, blah, blah. And then you email it to us, MIranda at bedpostconfessions.com. That is also on the website. What else can I say about it, though, just in a way? You can also send us pitches, too. So we get people who have an idea of something that they want to do. And so they'll say, does this interest you? And we say yes, absolutely, or we would be interested in this way. And a lot of time, and so maybe I'll just take you through the whole process. So then once we make it through the email, and then a piece is full enough where we can audition you, which is essentially sitting down with myself and Sadie, who's my co-producer, and we have you read the piece, and then we talk about it, and we ask questions, and maybe we'll push you to, reveal a little bit more, or go a little bit deeper, or just ask questions about your story, and so we really work with you. And there are people who have taken our feedback and not wanted to do anything with it.
Sure.
And so we don't really end up hearing from them, except for maybe they kind of resurface a year later and they were like, I was not ready to do that then, but I'm ready now. So it's always a timing thing of where the performer is, and then when we're looking at the actual curation of the show, it's 4 performers per show. So then we always are looking for a balance. So you might then we'll say, yes, we'd love to have you on our stage, but it might be some time before you're actually able to be on the stage, just because of logistics, and there's only so many shows, and then only so many types of stories we want to feature in a show.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned poetry and narrative, and I've seen incredibly funny stories told. I've seen really gut-wrenching, heartbreaking kind of stories. So knowing that, sex covers kind of everything in a certain way, what are the elements of a good story, of something that you're looking for?
Yeah, there has to be some sort of conflict in some way, or there has to be some sort of journey that you're going through. There is something that we look for in terms of emotional justice is something we look for, where you get to some sort of reckoning in some way, whether it's with yourself about something or with somebody. The show is about sex, but it's really about identity in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, was it sex with somebody that then completely altered the way that you think about yourself? Like, what is that? And so really taking us through that experience. I think it works best when the stories are more focused on one specific event. Mm-hmm. It's really hard when people have a life that's full of repression and they want to tell their full life story. It's too much. There's only so much that people can digest, which is, interesting. When Shelby, speaking about Shelby Haddon, when she had performed one of her second pieces, she actually already had sex in real life. I don't know that I should say that, but that's a little inside scoop on the show. But so she was performing this piece as if she hadn't, but she had. But she was letting people through her experience.
Walking them through that journey.
As they were going through it themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
As opposed to condensing all of her life of how she discovered that she has vaginismus, because that's a whole story in and of itself, then in her 20s getting broken up with all the time, and then having sex. So it's really broken up into 3 pieces. And a lot of the performers, they are, what we call bedpostians. They've performed many times, like Holly Lorca just performed for her 13th time. And so you just get a little bit more of them. And so that's what we tell people when they are excited. They're like, I finally have I just want to do this. And they want to tell everything. It's like, just, you will be in the family. Like, you can perform a little bit here and there, and another layer
There'll be opportunities, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, 9 years now, seeing somebody, doing this 5, 10, 13 times.
Right.
What's it been like for you, just watching people kind of grow and getting all those different slices of their journey, way more than the audience does?
I adore it. It's really my favorite part of the show, is working with the performers and asking them hard questions. I'm the producer that's going to push you and make you a little bit uncomfortable. People are definitely nervous.
You have to kind of go good cop, bad cop with Sadie?
Yeah, a little bit. Okay. A little bit. I mean, I would say that's the dynamic. She focuses a lot more on the performance, and I focus a lot on the writing. So, yeah, it's when I when someone gets that nervous feeling and was just sort of like, oh, fuck, I was hoping no one would notice or no one would ask me that. It's like, yeah, there we are. That's it. That's your bedpost piece. Yeah.
You mentioned that you, kind of changed the schedule and are now doing it quarterly and all of that. What are some of the other ways that it's changed over the past 9 years? I know that, you're fairly new at the North Door, which is this really huge, wonderful venue. How has it grown and changed?
Yeah, we've been at the North Door for a long time. I think we've been there 6 or 7 years, actually.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. We started out at Spider House, and then we moved to the North Door. It also changed. There was 4 of us producing it in the beginning, and I think that that's what enabled us to keep the show going for as long as we have, because there's always somebody to pick up the slack when somebody else had a life happening where they couldn't focus on the show, especially when it was monthly. And now it is just Sadie and I being the Austin producers. Julie Gillis moved to Ashland, Oregon, and she has taken up a bedpost there, which it's also interesting to see what works. So there was really a need for this show to be here in Austin. In Ashland, Oregon, there's not as much of a need. So she has found to do the show once a year really works out. And she manages also, there's a show in Boulder. We also have somebody working on the show called Teepee Confessions in Canada, and it is all about the indigenous cultures and decolonizing sexuality, and that has really taken off. Dr. Kim Tallbear is the one who produces that, and she is in the academic circuit, and she does these shows that are just phenomenally well produced in these gorgeous like opera halls. So that's fun. And I think there's one coming up in West Virginia. But anyways, there was one maybe 3 years ago or something in San Francisco. One of our Bedpostians who lived in Austin moved to San Francisco, wanted to start one. Didn't really work out so well in San Francisco. So I think that there's something definitely about Austin where there was a need for it. And, you know, even after all this time, we think, should we keep doing this show? You know, do we really want to keep doing this? And the answer is yeah. I mean, until there isn't a need, until we're having to, you know,
until nobody shows up anymore.
Exactly. So
yeah, as long as the seats are still packed. You know, I think it's really interesting to think about Austin as a place where there really is a need for this. And I do think of us as a beacon city. And I mean, growing up just about an hour from here, coming to Austin as like a awkward queer teenager was always a goal. And so I definitely see that. I'm curious if you feel like the community that you're building is sort of a place that people are coming together from.
Oh, yeah. The community is so beautiful. And I'm not even really a part of it all that much. I'm just like, it's like Sadie and I are just the people that created this space.
Facilitators?
Yeah.
Too busy throwing the party to like enjoy it?
Well, for fucking sure. But then also I just mean we're not really ladies about town, you know? And so on social medias, I'll see a lot of the Bedpostians together, or they're working together in some capacity, starting writing groups, or several of them now are in Spike Gillespie's writing workshop, and there's been recruits coming from that. So that community is, it's beautiful, and I love seeing it. I kind of have like the opposite of FOMO when I see them all together, and I'm not there. I just am like, that is just wonderful. I cannot undervalue that feeling enough. So that didn't really sound right.
Yeah, no, I hear you though.
Yeah, we got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Just knowing that something that you've helped create is in all of these different cities, affecting all of these different lives, and building these communities is, I mean, after 9 years, that has to be a beautiful thing to watch.
Yeah, it is. It is. I feel incredibly grateful that I am part of creating a show that people love and, you know, respect too. Like there will be people at the show who will kind of show the newbies around, and if they're talking during the performers, they'll like, you know, shh them and kind of take care of each other.
So with the success, as you were saying, it's had success here and in some other places, but maybe in other cities, not so much. Have you ever thought about taking it on tour?
Yes. We have thought probably about everything one can possibly do, but
Christmas albums coming out, gonna have your own fragrance line.
It's not happening.
Okay.
It's not happening. I mean, we're not in our 20s. This is not our full-time job. You know, Sadie and I have families, so the idea of touring a show just isn't really possible. It's fantastic to think about. We did just get swag, which we have not had swag in 8 years, so that's really exciting. I'm wearing the muscle tee right now. Do you want to see some of the other swag?
Yeah, bring it on. Sure.
This is our Confess journal.
Ooh.
So the thing is that the confessions, they all start out as I confess. And it's a really great writing prompt. So this came from an audience member suggestion. She said, I just want a journal that is something that I can have as a writing prompt of I confess.
Yeah, as a way
And
of getting that out.
This was created from the community, and there's also a bag because you got to have a tote. And then, there's a T-shirt and a muscle tank. I'm wearing the muscle. There's a racerback tank. So, yeah, that was a big thing. That's kind of as much as we're gonna do right at the moment.
Yeah, well, I should mention that we're definitely put a link to the website and the store and all of that and the footnotes for the show. I really encourage everybody to check out the different podcast episodes and everything kind of associated if you're not able to actually make it in, because these really are beautiful stories and something that I think everybody in our audience would really appreciate being a part of.
So can you tell us, I will say real quick, we are still waiting for callers. So if you want to call in, of course, it doesn't have to be about today's topic. It could be about anything. 512-686-0279. So what would you say is one of the funniest confessions that you have ever heard?
We had one this last show. It was, I confess, I love having sex with a Donald Trump piñata.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
So many
your
questions
kink,
to unpack
right?
there.
I'll say your kink is not my kink, but your kink is okay.
It's a good policy to
said.
maintain
Well
here.
said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many questions.
I know, right?
Is it full of candy at this stage? You
Yeah.
know what? Do we
No.
want to know? We don't want to know.
We don't want to
So
know
you
what it's full
imagine
of.
it's a dude, right? But it could totally
Ostensibly, yeah.
be a woman. Like, you don't always know the gender of these confessions.
That is a fair
That's
point.
true.
Yeah.
Oh my. Okay, now I have so many. All right, getting back to that. What would be one of the most common, so if someone were to say one of the most common confessions that people think they are the only one experiencing this, and then, because you've heard it all, you've heard all the confessions, what would you say
Come to
is one
find
of,
out.
is one of the more common confessions that you're like, well, no, you're not alone?
There was one that just came up at the last show, and it was something like, I confess, it takes me 20 minutes to come, and I'm scared of taking on a partner. Presumably because 20 minutes is a long time, which then, we read these confessions, but then we also take time to talk about them. And so Sadie and I had a conversation about that where it was like, well, 20 minutes actually seems quite fast. Like, that's not
It's a regular...
That's it's not like a quickie necessarily, but it's not hours, you
Right.
know? So I think, like, here, there's the confession, there's also the reaction to it. So it's our talking about it and then the audience's reaction. So I think it kind of helped normalize that, like, that wasn't actually a very long time.
Right.
And then there was another one, because then we ended up having a conversation about porn. There was a confession about... I think it was about double penetration, and it was about the fact that it's way harder than it looks. And so then we were having this conversation, I mean, not really, like a side, like 3-second,
Right.
Sure,
three
yeah.
sentences conversation about that this could be about porn. Like, you may think that, like, you have to come super quick, less than 20 minutes, and, double penetration is going to be like soup's easy, and these two things are not really, right? So then we're like, is this all a thing of porn? And then saying, like, well, we're not trying to shame porn or say porn is a problem. It's just, how do we end up having these conversations?
More realistic in
Yeah.
the perception that we see online.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think, if anything, that's a common thread in the confessions. It's someone having a desire to do something, and they don't know how to talk about it. So we're starting to see more confessions, maybe because we're reiterating this. So it'll be a confession of, like, I confess I don't know how to tell my partner that I want to try kinky sex. And so then we say, all right, this is the time when you just kind of nudge your partner and be like, that's my confession. So we're kind of getting more of those in this way because it's a great way to start a conversation. So if it's not your confession, then you can also just say, hey, what did you think about that confession about kinky sex? I mean, have you ever thought about kinky sex? Like, what are your thoughts about it? And then you can kind of put it on somebody else.
Yeah,
and
opening
then
the door a
see
little bit.
the reaction.
Right.
So there's a lot of like people sussing out other people's reaction to things. And yeah, I mean, we will intentionally sometimes read confessions about cheating as a way to talk about cheating,
Or about unrequited desires.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I never doubted that there was a lot of work that went into kind of curating those and going through all the submissions, but it's so interesting to think about not just the confession as it sort of stands on its own, but the conversation that's coming out of that.
Yes.
Managing that conversation in a like sex positive and supportive way sounds mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's a little stressful. I'm not going to lie, like, in between, because there's 4 or 5 sets of confessions. And so, in between before Sadie and I are grabbing a stack of them and just kind of go through and make sure that we have a range of, sweet and funny and ones that we can have a conversation about. And so we're always trying to find a range and figure out which ones will do well for our show, which is really built on ethics, education, and entertainment. So we want to hit all 3 of those with every show, with every story or every confession reading at some point.
Yeah, so I guess to clarify to the audience, in between the speakers who have like rehearsed and submitted these stories, audience members are scribbling things down on cards in a dimly lit bar, and then that's getting read on stage. And the results can be pretty fascinating. There's a collection of them on the website, and definitely worth checking out.
So do you get primarily women with their confessions, or do you also get men with their confessions?
For the confessions, I don't know the gender. I mean, we can sometimes stereotype based on handwriting, but we don't really. For the performers, it's generally women. And if it is men, they are gay or queer identified in some way. Straight men are hard to get on the stage.
Do you think maybe they're a bit more afraid of confessing in an open,
That kind of platform?
that open platform in front of people?
I think it's just not intuitive to them in a way. When I was 8, my aunt gave me a makeup bag and my brother a tool set. Or no, sorry, she gave me a makeup bag another year. That year specifically, a diary.
Oh, okay.
And so I think, girls are given diaries and boys aren't really. And so the idea of writing your diary and confessing is something I think starts for women at an early age. And I think it can very easily for boys too. It's just not as driven to. So anyways,
One of those gender stereotype things.
I just think it's more natural for women to do it. And then that just kind of feeds itself. So that then we are featuring more women on stage. So then more men feel like they don't belong, or they feel like they can't be like the space is not for them, and it most certainly is. It's harder. We have to recruit a little bit more. I mean, it's worked. We've had some shows where it's been all men, and that's been phenomenal. So,
Wow, that sounds like it would be great.
It was a great night. Yes.